Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. In this video we have some very exciting and interesting tidbits, and we begin with Jude Law. In a brand new interview with Entertainment Tonight, he opened up about his role as the Jedi Jod Narwood in the upcoming show Skeleton Crew, and what Star Wars fans can look forward to this coming December. The interviewer was smart to ask him whether or not we can expect some familiar faces, and the kinds of Easter eggs he had previously alluded to. He responded very vaguely, joking that if he reveals anything too big, Jon Favreau's gonna come in the room and drag him out. Jude has a great sense of humour, but he was very aware of his choice of words, so thinking before answering, he eventually revealed we can expect, quote, some familiar characters, but mainly familiar species and planets. So does he mean it's familiarity because the characters are of species we know? Is he just talking about the pirates from The Mandalorian? Or is he alluding to other major characters coming up? Jon Favreau recently revealed that with the future of the Mandoverse, he is very interested in, quote, bringing in other characters who are in play during this time. And with a show during the New Republic time period, with kids getting lost in space on an Amblin-style adventure, the possibilities are rather broad. It's worth noting that Jude is very excited for this upcoming show. He remembers impersonating stormtroopers and Han Solo, and having been so excited about the original trilogy. And did you know, my dear friends, Skeleton Crew is an homage to the original 3 films. But this is a very unique series, something reiterated both at D23 and during this interview. And while I've seen mixed reaction, like I said in my breakdown, don't take it too seriously. It's the kind of series you take at face value and go along for the ride. But with Jude confirming the possibility of surprises, I really can't wait. And staying on the subject of Skeleton Crew news, we have confirmation of who wrote and composed the score. This first appeared on a now deleted Instagram post from his agency, but it's Mick Giacchino, not Michael Giacchino, Mick, his son. While it would have been awesome to get the Rogue One composer on this project, Mick Giacchino is an established composer in his own right, having written the music to Zootopia Plus, The Muppets Mayhem, Extinct and Turkey Hollow. He's an up-and-coming composer, and I believe the Star Wars series is really going to put him on the map. His style has generally been more upbeat and jolly, and I can see this working perfectly in a show like Skeleton Crew. Let's hope it's amazing. So moving on, my dear friends, we have something a little bit different. There is a brand new rumour concerning Kathleen Kennedy, and I know what you're thinking, here we go again. We've had endless rumours over the last 7-8 years that Kathleen Kennedy is stepping down as president of Lucasfilm, but this time the rumour's a bit different. Take it with a pinch of salt, it is just a wild rumour, but one worth discussing nonetheless. Apparently Kathleen Kennedy is going to step down as president of Lucasfilm, but she wants to go out on a major win, a victory lap, a project to really invigorate Star Wars fans, and that is how she wants to close off her legacy. Now, regardless of her accolades across Hollywood, some would argue, when it comes to Star Wars alone, her legacy has been less than positive, to say the very least. She is very much not a popular person from the standpoint of the Star Wars fandom, and it's completely understandable as to why. Now, in terms of this specific rumour, having looked at the slate of content, I reckon this so-called victory lap, this one big final win, is going to be a movie. But I've not seen too many fans really invigorated by what was shown for the big screen stuff. The Rey movie wasn't even showcased. And in terms of fan anticipation, it doesn't seem like a very popular movie, so I'm struggling to see if this rumour is legit, which of the upcoming projects, or more specifically the movies, is the one that she wants to be her big win. And to be honest, if it's true, I don't think this is going to make a difference. Fans have been frustrated with the state of Lucasfilm for nearly a decade, and I will come back to this in just a moment. But first, Kathleen Kennedy says the future of Star Wars is an ever-evolving process, and she seems far more optimistic than your average Star Wars fan online. And you know, I think we forget that while Star Wars Disney Plus series have been hit or miss, I think the biggest amount of backlash wasn't for The Acolyte, it wasn't for The Mandalorian Season 3, it wasn't for any of the more recent stuff. It really all originates with the way Lucasfilm handled Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy. No matter what criticisms I come across on Star Wars social media spaces, it always goes back to what fans call the bastardization of Luke.
Mark, this past year has been an amazing one for Star Wars. Mark? Mark?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have dialogue? I'm used to just staring intensely.
And this brings me on to a wider discussion. While Lucasfilm is planning a return to the big screen for the franchise in 2026, an overall sentiment that we keep seeing time and again is that Star Wars needs change. There needs to be something to revamp the brand. And I recently came across a fantastic video by Thor Skywalker which is titled, "The Only Way to Fix Star Wars is to Fix Luke Skywalker." And this video does a great job at diagnosing what is the problem, what is the true fundamental problem at Lucasfilm. Is it an unwillingness to move on from this time period, or do they need to go back and fix what is arguably the biggest mistake since the acquisition through what some call a character destruction in episodes 7, 8 and 9, but mainly The Last Jedi. In the video, Thor refers to the fact the Mandalorian Season 2 finale where Luke showed up, younger, de-aged, was a real victory for the fandom. The fundamental question, could they right the wrongs of the sequel trilogy, or is it too late? Because some argue Star Wars needs to move 1,000 years in the past, which is what they're doing with the James Mangold movie, or 1,000 years into the future, have all new characters, and just avoid those we've seen being fleshed out in the main saga. While this position is rather interesting, there is something to be said that for many fans, their main interest was seeing the continuation of the original trilogy heroes. And now that to so many that's been tarnished, there is no going back, there is no repair. Even more so now that Carrie is gone. I've always said, to fix this issue, use the animated side of the franchise to focus on what happens after episode 6. I suspect the Mandoverse is going to utilise Luke, Leia and Han again in some capacity, but if they did a post-episode 6 animated adventure show, I think that could attract a substantial audience, although as we know, probably nowhere near the live action stuff. There's a lot in his video which speaks to Luke Skywalker being the embodiment of hope of the entire franchise. And I think there's an issue here because for those who are calling for the sequel trilogy to be decanonized, I don't see Lucasfilm ever doing this. Then you're pissing off fans who did like those movies. I also should say, after The Mandalorian Season 3, there were a lot of fans who said, well, none of this matters because ultimately, all roads lead to the sequels, so there isn't a reason to care about anything they make. This is where the hope that Jon and Dave are adapting Heir to the Empire comes in. It's an interesting discussion, and to be honest, the way forward, I think, is to utilise Luke sparingly in the Mandoverse, and then just be done with it, move on. And this brings us on to the management, the Lucasfilm president, and the environment at Lucasfilm. I think no matter which way you look at it, there is absolutely an argument to be made that Lucasfilm is kind of out of touch. Whether you're a prequels fan, an original trilogy fan, I spoke about this in my discussion with Star Force 1, they've kind of isolated so many different groups of the Star Wars fandom. And then the question is, when and if Kathleen Kennedy does leave, what does the future of Lucasfilm look like? Are they going to clear house? Is there going to be a revamping of the Lucasfilm story group? Are we going to see different writers and directors, a very different approach for the future of the franchise? And is it going to be a good thing? One of the biggest aspects of this discussion, and it goes back to the Thor Skywalker video, is what kind of Star Wars do fans want to see? Star Wars fans in particular are not a monolith, and everyone has their own version of what they need to do. Do they need to go back to the Old Republic, go far into the future? Because I've seen fans who say nothing outside of 1 to 6 really is Star Wars, the Skywalkers are Star Wars. And there are others who say the further we go from George's direction, the better. And I think current Lucasfilm has tried to give us a diverse plethora of projects, but in terms of the actual content itself, we have had a bit of everything. And I'm not talking about quality, I'm just talking about time periods and characters, the kind of characters we see in the shows and also the video games. So I guess, what would the next iteration of Lucasfilm under new management even be like? Could it be worse? Or as many suggest, could it only get better? I want to know your thoughts of this discussion in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and may the Force be with you, always.